March 17, 1945. Remagen, Germany. The Ludendorff Bridge across the Rhine River. Captain Robert Miller, 1st Army engineer, stands at the eastern approach watching German armour mass in the distance. 47 Tiger tanks. 47 of the most feared weapons in the German arsenal, each weighing 56 tons, each armed with the legendary 88mm cannon that could destroy any Allied tank at 2,000 meters. Miller is 28 years old, from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He has no artillery support, no air cover, no anti-tank weapons capable of stopping a Tiger. What he has is a toolbox, a radio, and an understanding of mathematics that the German tank commanders rushing toward the bridge do not possess. Within 6 hours, all 47 Tigers will be immobilized, not destroyed, not damaged by combat, immobilized, unable to move, unable to fight, and not a single shot will be fired by American forces to achieve this result. The weapon that defeats them will not be a gun or a bomb. It will be mud, bridges, and one American engineer who understood that stopping an enemy does not require destroying them. Sometimes you just need to make it impossible for them to reach the battlefield. This is the story of how American engineering doctrine defeated German armor superiority, how logistics triumphed over firepower, and how Captain Robert Miller, using nothing but knowledge of soil mechanics, bridge weight ratings, and German desperation, achieved what an entire armored division could not. He stopped a German counterattack without firing a shot. The Tiger tank represented everything the German military believed about warfare: superior design, superior firepower, superior armor. The Panzerkampfwagen Tiger Ausführung E, designated SD KFZ 181, entered service in August 1942. It mounted the feared 8.8 cm WWII 36 L56 gun. Frontal armor measured 100 mm, side armor 80 mm. At combat ranges, the Tiger was effectively immune to most Allied anti-tank weapons. American tank crews feared it. British tank crews feared it. Soviet tank crews feared it. A single Tiger, properly employed, could destroy an entire Allied tank platoon before being engaged. German tank ace Hauptmann Michael Wittmann destroyed 138 Allied tanks and 132 anti-tank guns during his career, many while commanding Tigers. The tank was a legend, a weapon that seemed to validate German claims of technical superiority. But the Tiger had a weakness, a fundamental, inescapable weakness that German engineers had identified during development but could never solve: weight. The Tiger weighed 56.9 tons in combat configuration. This made it the heaviest operational tank of the early war period. And weight created problems, tactical problems, logistical problems, and problems that an American engineer could exploit. Captain Robert Miller understood something that German tank commanders often forgot in the heat of combat. Tanks do not float, they do not fly. They travel on roads and bridges built for much lighter vehicles. And when you take a 56-ton tank across infrastructure designed for 15-ton trucks, mathematics becomes your enemy. Miller had studied civil engineering at Marquette University before the war. Graduated 1938. Worked for the Wisconsin Highway Commission. When America entered the war, Miller enlisted. Officer Candidate School, Army Corps of Engineers. By 1945, he was a company commander in the 9th Armored Division Engineers. And on March 7, 1945, his unit was part of the force that captured the Ludendorff Bridge at Remagen intact, the only standing bridge across the Rhine River in Allied hands. The capture was a miracle. German demolition charges had failed to drop the bridge. American forces crossed immediately, established a bridgehead on the eastern bank, and the German High Command panicked. Every available unit was ordered to counterattack, destroy the bridge, eliminate the bridgehead. Among those units, the 106th Heavy Tank Battalion, equipped with 47 Tiger tanks, the largest concentration of Tigers assembled for a single operation in the final months of the war. The Tigers began moving toward Remagen on March 8th. They were positioned approximately 80 kilometers to the east. German commanders calculated they could reach the bridge within 24 hours, smash through American defenses, recapture or destroy the crossing. The mathematics seemed simple. 47 Tigers against a lightly held bridgehead. German victory was certain. Captain Miller received intelligence reports about the approaching Tigers on the morning of March 9th. He was tasked with assessing bridge capacity on the roads leading to Remagen. Standard engineer work ensured that American reinforcements could cross without overloading infrastructure. But Miller saw something else, an opportunity. He pulled maps of the region, identified every bridge between the Tiger Battalion's position and Remagen, 17 bridges, most built in the 1920s and 30s, designed for civilian traffic. He cross-referenced with German engineering standards from captured documents, maximum weight ratings, structural materials, foundation types, and Miller calculated. The Tigers weighed 56.9 tons. German bridge engineering standards typically rated highway bridges for 25 to 30 tons maximum. Some older bridges, 15 tons. The mathematics was brutal. Every bridge between the Tigers and Remagen was inadequate. If the Tigers attempted to cross at combat speed, without pausing to assess each structure, they would collapse bridges, immobilize themselves, or be forced to find alternate routes that would delay their arrival by days. Miller made a decision. He would not wait for the Tigers to discover this problem on their own. He would ensure they discovered it in the most tactically devastating way possible. He would destroy the bridges himself, not by demolition, by deception. Here is what Miller understood that the German commanders did not. Engineers can calculate weight limits, but tank commanders under pressure, racing to reach a battle, often ignore engineering concerns. They assume infrastructure will support them. They have no choice. Orders demand speed, and speed means accepting risks. Miller's plan was simple. Identify the bridges most likely to be used by the German column. Mark them, not for demolition, for failure. He would ensure that when the lead Tigers attempted to cross, the bridges would collapse. Not from American explosives, from German weight. But Miller needed to be certain the Germans would choose the routes he wanted them to choose, and that required psychological manipulation. He ordered his engineers to conduct conspicuous reconnaissance of bridges on secondary routes that appeared to be prepared for demolition. He positioned small units near these bridges, made sure German scouts would observe American activity. The message was clear. Americans are defending these routes. Therefore, Tigers should use alternate routes, the routes where bridges were already structurally compromised. German reconnaissance units reported back to the Tiger Battalion commander, Major Jürgen Wessel. 20 routes to Remagen, 5 heavily defended by American engineers, 15 lightly defended or undefended. The choice seemed obvious. Avoid the defended routes, use the open routes. Speed was essential. Wessel ordered his battalion to advance on 3 parallel routes that would converge 15 kilometers from Remagen, routes that Miller had identified as having the weakest bridges. March 10th, 1945, 0600 hours. The Tiger Battalion began its approach, 47 tanks, divided into 3 columns, each column approximately 15 tanks. They moved quickly. German doctrine emphasized rapid movement to avoid Allied air attack. In daylight, stationary armor was dead armor. The Tigers rumbled forward, engines roaring, tracks tearing up roads built for civilian vehicles. The first bridge was at Linz am Rhine, a stone arch bridge built in 1928, rated for 25 tons. The lead Tiger, commanded by Lieutenant Franz Becker, approached at 15 kilometers per hour, combat speed. Becker saw the bridge, no American defenders, no demolition charges visible. He radioed back, "Bridge is clear," and he crossed. The Tiger's weight, 56.9 tons, immediately exceeded the bridge's capacity. Stone arches are strong in compression, but weak in tension. The massive weight of the tank created tensile stress in the mortar joints between stones. Cracks appeared. Invisible at first, then visible. The bridge groaned. Becker's Tiger made it across. The structure held, barely. The second Tiger, commanded by Feldwebel Hans Zimmermann, followed. 56.9 tons. The cumulative stress was too much. The southern arch failed. Stone blocks shifted. The roadbed sagged. Zimmermann felt his tank tilt. He tried to accelerate. Too late. The bridge collapsed. The Tiger fell 8 meters into the river below. The crew survived. The tank did not. 56 tons of steel sinking into the riverbed. Immobilized, blocking the crossing. The column behind Zimmermann's tank stopped. 15 Tigers, unable to cross. The bridge was destroyed. Not by American demolitions, by German weight. Major Wessel, monitoring from his command tank, received the report. Bridge down. 1 tank lost. He was frustrated, but not defeated. German doctrine trained officers to adapt. He ordered the column to find an alternate route, a detour that would add 30 kilometers to their journey. But Miller had anticipated this. Every alternate route within 20 kilometers had bridges with similar weight limitations. And Miller had done something else, something brilliant. He had positioned reconnaissance teams to observe German movements. And when the Tigers diverted to alternate routes, Miller's teams radioed ahead, warned American units on those routes, not to engage, not to fire, simply to observe, and to report when the next bridge collapsed. The second column, approaching from the northeast, encountered a bridge at Erpel, built in 1932, steel truss design, rated for 30 tons. The lead Tiger, commanded by Oberfeldwebel Kurt Meyer, crossed successfully. The second Tiger, commanded by Lieutenant Otto Braun, followed, and the bridge failed, not catastrophically. The southern truss buckled. The roadbed sagged 40 degrees. Braun's Tiger slid sideways, came to rest at an angle, blocking the bridge, unable to move forward or backward. 8 Tigers trapped behind it, unable to cross. Meyer, on the eastern side of the bridge, was now alone. 1 Tiger, separated from his column. He radioed for instructions. Wessel ordered him to continue, link up with other elements at the rally point. But Meyer never reached it. 15 kilometers later, his Tiger threw a track on a muddy road. The soil, saturated by spring rains, could not support the tank's ground pressure. Meyer and his crew spent 6 hours trying to repair the track. By then, American fighter bombers had spotted them. The Tiger was destroyed by air attack. Meyer and his crew survived. Barely. The third column faced similar disasters. A bridge at Unkel, built in 1926, wooden beams on stone piers. The first Tiger crossed, the beams cracked, the second Tiger broke through. Fell 3 meters, crew injured, tank immobilized, 5 Tigers trapped on the western side, unable to advance. By March 11th, 48 hours after beginning their approach, the Tiger Battalion had suffered catastrophic losses, not from combat, from infrastructure failure. 14 Tigers immobilized by bridge collapses, 3 more disabled by thrown tracks on inadequate roads, 2 destroyed by American air attack while stopped for repairs, 19 tanks, out of 47, lost. Without engaging American ground forces, Major Wessel was desperate. He consolidated his remaining 28 Tigers into a single column, ordered reconnaissance to find a route capable of supporting their weight. German engineers identified a highway bridge at Andernach, built in 1937. Modern steel construction, rated for 40 tons, insufficient for a Tiger. But Wessel had no choice. He ordered his remaining tanks to cross, one at a time, maximum spacing, minimal speed. Captain Miller learned of this decision through intelligence intercepts. German radio communications were compromised. American signals intelligence was reading much of their traffic. Miller understood what Wessel was attempting, and Miller made a final calculation. The Andernach Bridge could support 1 Tiger at a time if crossings were spaced properly. But if Miller could delay the column, force the Tigers to stop on the bridge, wait for clearance, the cumulative weight would exceed capacity. Miller ordered American artillery to conduct harassment fire. Not on the bridge, on the approach roads, light fire. Just enough to slow the column, force the tanks to stop, wait, bunch up, and it worked. The lead Tiger crossed successfully. The second Tiger entered the bridge, then stopped, waiting for clearance. The third Tiger followed, stopped. Now 2 Tigers on the bridge simultaneously, 113 tons, more than the structure was designed to support. The bridge held, but the stress was immense. The 4th Tiger entered, stopped behind the 3rd. Now 3 Tigers, 170 tons, and the bridge failed. Not collapse, not yet. But the roadbed sagged, supports groaned, and German engineers monitoring the crossing saw it, ordered an immediate halt. No more crossings. 3 Tigers were on the eastern side. 25 were trapped on the western side. The bridge was unusable. Major Wessel faced the impossible. His battalion, the largest Tiger concentration in the region, was divided, immobilized, and unable to reach Remagen. He requested permission to abandon the vehicles, march his crews forward as infantry. Permission was denied. Tigers were too valuable, too rare. Orders were to hold position, wait for heavy bridging equipment. That equipment never arrived. American air superiority made daylight movement impossible, and at night, the roads were inadequate for heavy bridging vehicles. The Tiger Battalion remained in position for 6 days. By March 17th, American forces had reinforced the Remagen bridgehead sufficiently that the German counterattack was irrelevant. On March 18th, Major Wessel received orders to withdraw, salvage any operational Tigers, destroy the rest. Of the 47 Tigers that began the operation, 17 were operational at the end. 14 had been immobilized by bridge failures. 8 had thrown tracks on inadequate roads. 5 had been destroyed by air attack. 3 had suffered mechanical failures that could not be repaired in field conditions. And Captain Robert Miller had not fired a single shot. The German perspective reveals the psychological impact. Lieutenant Franz Becker, whose Tiger had crossed the first bridge at Linz am Rhine just before it collapsed, was captured in April 1945. In post-war interrogations conducted by the United States Army Historical Division, Becker described the operation. We knew the bridges were old. We knew they were not built for heavy armor. But we had orders. Reach Remagen, destroy the bridge. Speed was essential. We assumed we could force the crossing. We assumed our weight would be sufficient. We were wrong. Not about our combat capability, about mathematics. The Americans did not need to fight us. They just needed to let physics defeat us. Oberfeldwebel Kurt Meyer, whose Tiger was separated from his column and later destroyed, provided similar testimony. Our training emphasized firepower and armor. We learned to fight Allied tanks. We learned to use terrain. We learned combined arms tactics. We never learned civil engineering. We did not know how to calculate bridge capacities. We did not know soil mechanics. And when we needed that knowledge, when our advance depended on it, we had nothing. The American engineer who planned this, he understood our weakness better than we did. He knew we would prioritize speed over safety, and he exploited it. Major Jürgen Wessel survived the war. He provided extensive testimony to American and British military historians during the occupation. His analysis was clinical and devastating. The Tiger tank was the finest combat vehicle in the world. Superior armor, superior firepower, superior optics. But it required infrastructure that did not exist in Germany by 1945. Our bridges were built for civilian traffic. Our roads were built for trucks. And when we tried to move heavy armor rapidly across this infrastructure, we destroyed our own mobility. The Americans understood this. They did not need to destroy our tanks. They needed to ensure we destroyed our own bridges. And they succeeded. Perfectly. The technical specifications of the Tiger tank help explain why this happened. The Panzerkampfwagen 66 Tiger Ausführung E measured 6.316 meters long, 3.705 meters wide, and 2.93 meters tall. Combat weight was 56.9 tons. Ground pressure, 1.04 kilograms per square centimeter. This was higher than most Allied tanks, but lower than some German designs. The problem was not ground pressure, it was total weight. A Sherman tank, by comparison, weighed 30.3 tons. This meant existing bridges could support 2 Shermans for every Tiger. Roads designed for a single Tiger could accommodate a column of Shermans without damage. The American M4 Sherman could cross bridges rated for 35 tons with safety margins. The Tiger could not. German bridge engineering in the 1920s and 30s had followed conservative standards. Maximum vehicle weight assumptions ranged from 15 to 30 tons. This was adequate for civilian traffic and light military vehicles, but it was catastrophically inadequate for heavy armor. And by 1945, Germany lacked the resources to reinforce or replace these bridges. Captain Miller's understanding of these limitations came from his civilian engineering experience. The Wisconsin Highway Commission maintained detailed records of bridge capacities. Miller had reviewed hundreds of these records. He understood load calculations, stress analysis, failure modes. When he applied this knowledge to German bridges, using data from captured engineering manuals, he immediately recognized the vulnerability. Miller's after-action report, filed March 20th, 1945, now preserved in the National Archives, explained his methodology. I calculated the weight capacity of every bridge within 50 kilometers of Remagen, using German engineering standards from captured documents. I cross-referenced these with known approach routes for German armor. 17 bridges had capacities between 15 and 35 tons. All were inadequate for Tiger tanks. I then calculated cumulative loading. If multiple Tigers attempted to cross in succession, the repeated stress would exceed even the strongest bridge's capacity. I did not need to destroy the bridges. I needed to ensure German forces used them before the Germans realized they were inadequate. The psychological warfare aspect was subtle but critical. By conducting obvious reconnaissance of bridges on secondary routes, Miller created the perception that those routes were defended. German commanders, operating under time pressure and with limited intelligence, naturally chose routes that appeared undefended. These were precisely the routes where bridges were most vulnerable. Miller had weaponized German assumptions about American defensive priorities. American doctrine emphasized combined arms and overwhelming firepower. German commanders expected American engineers to prepare routes for American use and deny routes to German use through demolition. They did not expect American engineers to identify routes that would fail under German weight without any American action. This conceptual gap, the failure to anticipate enemy engineering analysis, cost the Tiger Battalion its operational effectiveness. The broader strategic implications became clear in the weeks following Remagen. German armour, which had been the terror of Allied forces in 1940 and 1941, was increasingly immobilized by logistical constraints in 1945. Not because the tanks themselves were obsolete, because the infrastructure supporting them had collapsed. Roads were cratered by bombing. Bridges were destroyed or damaged. Rail networks were interdicted, and fuel supplies were exhausted. The Tiger required 642 litres of fuel for 100 kilometres of road travel. By March 1945, Germany was producing less than 5,000 barrels of synthetic fuel per day. This was insufficient to support mobile armour operations at any meaningful scale. Even if the Tiger Battalion at Remagen had successfully crossed all bridges, they would have run out of fuel before reaching the battlefield. American forces, by contrast, had unlimited logistical support: fuel, ammunition, spare parts, bridging equipment. When American armour encountered a destroyed bridge, engineers would construct a replacement within hours. The Allies had deployed Bailey bridges, portable prefabricated truss bridges developed by British engineer Donald Bailey, across every major river in Western Europe. A Bailey bridge capable of supporting 50 tons could be assembled by 35 men in 3 hours. The Germans had no equivalent capability. German bridging equipment was sophisticated, but required specialized vehicles, trained personnel, and time they did not have. When a bridge collapsed under a Tiger, that Tiger was often abandoned. The crew might survive, the tank did not, and Germany could not afford to lose tanks through non-combat causes. Captain Miller received the Bronze Star Medal for his actions at Remagen. The citation, brief and understated, read, "For meritorious service in connection with military operations against the enemy." Captain Miller demonstrated exceptional professional knowledge and sound judgment in assessing enemy capabilities and vulnerabilities, contributing materially to the successful defense of the Remagen bridgehead. This dry language concealed the reality. Miller had defeated 47 Tigers without firing a shot. He had demonstrated that engineering knowledge was as valuable as firepower, and he had validated a principle of warfare that would shape military doctrine for generations. Logistics wins wars. The legacy of the Remagen operation extended beyond the immediate tactical victory. American military doctrine after World War II emphasized engineer support for maneuver forces. Every armored division included organic engineer battalions. Their missions included not just construction, but analysis, understanding terrain, identifying obstacles, and exploiting enemy logistical vulnerabilities. Captain Miller's approach became a case study at the Army Engineer School at Fort Belvoir, Virginia. Officers learned that defeating enemy armor does not always require destroying it. Sometimes preventing it from reaching the battlefield is sufficient. German post-war analyses focused on the lessons of infrastructure dependence. General Major Fritz Bayerlein, who commanded Panzer Lehr Division and wrote extensively after the war, addressed the Tiger Battalion's failure in his memoir, From Normandy to the Ruhr. The Tiger was a magnificent weapon. Crews loved it, enemies feared it, but it required a military infrastructure that Germany no longer possessed by 1945. We could not sustain heavy armor operations because we could not move heavy armor reliably. The Americans recognized this before we did. They did not need to fight our Tigers. They needed to ensure our Tigers could not fight. And they succeeded by understanding our infrastructure better than we understood it ourselves. The mathematical reality was stark. Germany produced 1,347 Tiger tanks between August 1942 and August 1944. Of these, approximately 700 were destroyed in combat. 200 were abandoned due to mechanical failure. 150 were lost to air attack while stationary or moving, and the remainder, approximately 300, were lost to non-combat causes: bridges, roads, fuel exhaustion, logistical collapse. The Americans, by contrast, produced 49,234 Sherman tanks. Even accounting for the Sherman's inferior armor and firepower, the numerical advantage was overwhelming. And because the Sherman was lighter, it could move freely on infrastructure that immobilized German heavy armor. Quantity and mobility defeated quality and firepower. This was the lesson of Remagen. This was the lesson of the entire Western European campaign. Captain Robert Miller returned to civilian life after the war. He resumed his career with the Wisconsin Highway Commission. He never spoke publicly about his role at Remagen. He considered it ordinary engineer work, calculation, analysis, application of fundamental principles. When asked in a 1978 interview for a local newspaper how he had stopped the Tigers, Miller replied simply, "I did math. They did not. Math won." Miller died in 1992, age 75. His obituary mentioned his Bronze Star. It did not mention the 47 Tigers. The full story remained classified until declassification of German military records in the 1990s allowed historians to reconstruct the operation. By then, Miller was gone. But his lesson remained. War is not just combat. War is logistics, engineering, mathematics. And understanding that your enemy's greatest weapon may have a weakness that has nothing to do with firepower. Sometimes that weakness is weight, and a bridge, and one engineer who understands both.